Have you ever wondered what happens when two of the most powerful, most talked about people on the planet have a serious disagreement? Not just any disagreement, but one that could ripple out and affect, well, just about everything. We're talking about a former president, a man who built an empire on his name, Donald Trump, and a tech titan who's literally trying to take us to Mars, Elon Musk. Imagine these two, head to head, no cameras, no audience, just a phone line crackling with tension. What would they say? How would they act? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a moment just like that, a high-stakes phone call that nobody was supposed to hear. Get ready, because this is a story you won't want to miss. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. Which state? Which city? We absolutely love to know and connect with all of our amazing viewers around the world. Seriously, drop a comment. We read them all. The air in certain parts of Washington, D.C. was thick with whispers. President Donald Trump, a man whose presence could fill any room, had just unveiled something big, something he was incredibly proud of, a massive new budget plan. He'd even given it a grand name, the One Big Beautiful Bill. He talked about it like it was going to solve everything, make the country stronger, richer, you name it. He expected applause, he expected praise, especially from the big players, the titans of industry, the people he considered his peers, maybe even his friends. But then, something unexpected happened. Someone very, very big decided to speak up, and not in a good way. That someone was Elon Musk. Now, Elon Musk isn't your typical businessman. He's got his hands in everything from electric cars that drive themselves to rockets that blast off into space. He even owns that place where everyone tweets or X's or whatever they call it now. And get this, for a little while, Elon had even worked with President Trump's team, trying to help make the government run a bit smoother. So you'd think maybe they were on the same page, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. First, it was a comment here, a remark there. Elon was on TV talking to a reporter, and he said he wasn't too thrilled about this massive spending bill. He sounded disappointed, like a teacher who just got a really messy homework assignment from a star student. President Trump, well, he hears everything. He's got people who tell him every little thing that's being said about him. At first, maybe he brushed it off. Elon's a bit of a maverick, always saying what's on his mind. No big deal, right? But then, Elon took it to his own turf. That social media platform, X. And he didn't hold back. Not one bit. He called the president's One Big Beautiful Bill things like a disgusting abomination. Whoa. He said it was massive, outrageous, and pork-filled. Pork-filled. That's like saying it's stuffed with a bunch of wasteful spending that nobody really needs. He finished it off with a big, loud, mammoth spending bills are bankrupting America. Enough. All caps. You know when someone uses all caps, they mean business. Now, imagine President Trump seeing those words. This is a man who prides himself on strength, on loyalty, on being the best. And here's Elon Musk, this tech genius he'd once brought into his circle, basically trashing his big, beautiful plan in front of the whole world. The president, as you know, usually doesn't let things like this slide. He's famous for hitting back hard and fast. But this time, silence. At least, public silence. No angry tweets. No fiery statements. Nothing. And that, folks, is sometimes even scarier. Because when a man like Donald Trump goes quiet on the outside, you can bet something is brewing on the inside. Inside the White House, the atmosphere was probably a little tense. Let's imagine an aide. We'll call him Arthur. A young man, always a bit nervous around the president, especially when delivering news he knew wouldn't be well received. Arthur had the unenviable task of compiling the latest social media reactions. He held his tablet like it was a live grenade. "Mr. President," Arthur might have said, his voice a little shaky, standing in the doorway of the Oval Office, that famous room where so much history has happened. The room itself felt heavy, the air thick with the scent of old wood, leather, and maybe a faint trace of the president's favorite hairspray. Sunlight streamed through the tall, arched windows, but it didn't seem to lighten the mood. Trump was behind the resolute desk, a desk made from the timbers of a British ship, a gift from Queen Victoria, a desk that had seen presidents make decisions about war and peace. Right now, though, Trump wasn't thinking about ancient history. He was thinking about current events. His events. He looked up, his eyes, a very particular shade of blue, narrowed slightly. "What is it, Arthur? Spit it out." Arthur swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Sir, it's Mr. Musk. On X. He's escalated his commentary on the budget, sir." Trump's face, usually so mobile, so expressive, became very still. That was a bad sign. "Escalated? Show me." His voice was deceptively soft. Arthur tiptoed forward, placing the tablet on the vast expanse of the polished desk. Trump leaned forward, his eyes scanning the screen. He read Musk's words. "Disgusting abomination. Pork-filled. Enough." For a long moment, the only sound in the Oval Office was the quiet tick-tock of a grandfather clock in the corner, a relentless, steady rhythm marking time, while the president absorbed this digital assault. Trump's finger tapped slowly on the desk. Tap, tap, tap. Each tap was like a drumbeat, signaling a coming storm. He leaned back in his big leather chair, the one that always seemed to make him look even more imposing. He didn't shout. He didn't pound the desk. Instead, a slow, calculating look came over his face. The kind of look that a chess master gets when they see not just the next move, but the move after that, and the one after that. "Get him on the phone, Arthur," Trump said, his voice still quiet, but now with an edge of cold steel. "Get Elon Musk on the phone, now." Arthur practically scurried out of the room, relieved to be out of the line of fire, but also a little thrilled, in a terrified sort of way, to be a fly on the wall for whatever was about to happen. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Elon Musk was probably in a completely different world. Maybe he was at one of his gigafactories, vast spaceships of manufacturing where robots danced and whirred, building the cars of the future. Or perhaps he was at SpaceX, in a control room filled with glowing screens, tracking the path of a rocket, arcing through the inky blackness of space. For Elon, the world was a place of constant motion, of relentless innovation, of problems waiting to be solved with logic and engineering. Let's imagine him in his office at SpaceX, a place probably less about plush carpets and more about whiteboards covered in complex equations and rocket designs. Maybe he was sipping a Diet Coke, his mind juggling a dozen different challenges. A new engine design, a Mars colonization plan, the latest drama on X. He was a man who lived on the edge of what's possible. His phone, a sleek, modern device, probably buzzed. Not with a public notification, but with a direct line, a number that only a few very important people had. His assistant, let's call her Sarah, a sharp, efficient woman used to Elon's whirlwind pace, might have poked her head in. "Mr. Musk, it's the White House on the line. President Trump for you." Elon, perhaps in the middle of sketching out a new thruster configuration on a digital pad, probably didn't even look up immediately. The White House? Trump? He might have paused for just a fraction of a second. He knew why they were calling. Of course he knew. He'd thrown a digital bomb, and he was smart enough to expect some kind of explosion in return. He might have taken a slow sip of his Diet Coke. Maybe a tiny, almost invisible smile played on his lips, or maybe it was a look of resignation, like, okay, here we go. Put him through, Sarah, he'd say, his voice calm, perhaps even a little bored? Or was that just extreme control? With Elon, it was always hard to tell. And so, the connection was made. A phone line stretching across the country, linking two of the most unconventional, powerful, and arguably ego-driven men of our time. One in the historic seat of American power, surrounded by symbols of tradition and authority. The other in the heart of futuristic innovation, surrounded by the raw energy of creation and disruption. The stage was set. The players were in position. Back in the Oval Office, President Trump held the receiver of his secure phone, a heavy, old-fashioned looking thing, not one of those flimsy smartphones. He liked the weight of it in his hand. It felt substantial, presidential. He probably swiveled his chair a bit, looking out the window at the White House gardens, a perfectly manicured landscape. He was a man who appreciated control, order, beauty as he defined it. And right now, someone was messing with his order. Elon? Trump's voice boomed into the receiver, friendly on the surface, like he was calling an old buddy. Donald Trump here. How are you doing, Elon? Keeping busy, I bet. Rockets and cars and all that stuff. The word stuff hung in the air for a moment, just a tiny bit dismissive. On the other end, Elon Musk was probably leaning back in his own chair, maybe looking at a giant screen displaying the Earth from space, a constant reminder of the bigger picture, of his grander ambitions. Mr. President, Elon's voice came through, clear and steady without any audible fluff. Yes, always busy. Good to hear from you. Polite. Correct. But not exactly warm. There was no, great to hear from you, Donald. Just the facts. Trump chuckled, a sound that didn't quite reach his eyes. Good, good. Listen, Elon, my friend. I saw your little messages. On the X. Very creative. Disgusting abomination. Strong words, Elon. Very strong. Trump let that hang in the air. He was giving Elon a chance, an opening to backtrack, to apologize, to say it was all a misunderstanding. That's how these games were often played in his world. You push, they pull back, you find a new balance. But Elon didn't pull back. Well, Mr. President, Musk replied, his tone still even, almost like he was discussing an engineering problem. I tend to be direct when I see a significant issue, and with all due respect, that budget proposal, as it stands, is a significant issue. From a fiscal perspective, it's problematic. Problematic. Such a mild word for what he'd actually tweeted. But in this direct conversation, he was choosing his words carefully, like a surgeon selecting the right instrument. Trump let out another short laugh, this one a little tighter. Problematic? Elon, this bill is going to make America a fortress of prosperity. It's the best budget this country has ever seen. The best! Everyone's saying it. Well, almost everyone. A slight pause. You used to be such a big supporter, Elon. You were on my team. Department of Government Efficiency, remember? Doge. Good name. My idea, mostly. He was trying a different angle now, reminding Elon of their past association, trying to make him feel a twinge of guilt, of disloyalty. Trump was a master at playing on people's emotions, their ambitions, their weaknesses. I remember my time at Doge very well, Mr. President, Elon said, and now there was perhaps a hint of something else in his voice, not warmth, but maybe a touch of irony? It was illuminating. It showed me just how much waste can accumulate, and this bill, sir, with all respect, seems to be adding to that accumulation, not reducing it. The numbers simply don't add up to long-term fiscal health. It's basic math. Basic math. To Donald Trump, who often operated on gut instinct, on the power of his personality, on creating his own reality, hearing his multi-trillion-dollar vision reduced to basic math by this rocket boy, it must have been like a red rag to a bull. Trump's knuckles, the ones gripping the phone, probably tightened. The smile, if there ever was one, was long gone from his voice. Basic math, Elon? Trump's voice got a little louder now, a little more of that famous rally stage growl creeping in. Let me tell you about basic math. SpaceX has some very, very big government contracts. Very big. Beautiful contracts. For NASA. For the military. Those contracts, they help you shoot your rockets up into the sky. Keep things running smoothly. You understand what I'm saying, Elon? Smoothly. There it was. The velvet glove was off, and the iron fist was showing. It wasn't a direct threat, not quite. But it was close. It was a reminder, a nudge, a suggestion that the government, his government, had a lot of power over Elon Musk's empire. The silence on the line stretched for a few seconds. In the Oval Office, the grandfather clock ticked on, each tick echoing the unspoken pressure. Trump waited. He was used to people crumbling under that kind of pressure. He'd built a career on it. But Elon Musk wasn't most people. He might have taken another sip of his Diet Coke. Or perhaps he swiveled his chair to look at a model of the Starship, the colossal rocket designed to take humans to Mars. A project so audacious, so mind-bogglingly ambitious, that it made White House budget squabbles seem small. Mr. President, Elon said, his voice still remarkably calm, but now with a firmness that matched Trump's own. My companies deliver value. SpaceX provides the most cost-effective and reliable launch services in the world. That's why we win contracts. Not because of political favors, but because we are the best at what we do. And Tesla is accelerating the world's transition to sustainable energy. These are goals that benefit America, that benefit humanity. He paused, then added, his voice perhaps a fraction cooler. And I believe that bankrupting the country with unsustainable spending is not beneficial to anyone, Mr. President. It's not good for business, it's not good for innovation, and it's certainly not good for the future generations who will have to pay the price. My criticism of the bill comes from that perspective. As an engineer, I look at systems. And the system this budget proposes is, frankly, on a path to failure. Wow. He wasn't just standing his ground, he was pushing back. He was lecturing the President of the United States on systems engineering and fiscal responsibility. In the Oval Office, Donald Trump was probably stunned into a rare moment of silence. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. People were supposed to be a little bit scared, a little bit intimidated. They were supposed to want his approval, his favor. They weren't supposed to talk back to him like he was some underperforming middle manager. Trump's face likely started to flush that familiar shade of red climbing up from his neck. He pushed his chair back, the casters groaning slightly on the polished wooden floor. He might have stood up, needing to pace, to physically manifest the energy that was now coiling inside him. Failure, Elon? Trump's voice was dangerously low now, all pretense of friendliness gone. You want to talk about failure? I made you. People didn't even know who you were before I brought you in, before I put you on that council. You were just some guy with a few ideas. I gave you credibility. I gave you a platform. This, of course, wasn't entirely true. Elon Musk was already a global figure long before his brief stint with the Trump administration. But for Trump, in that moment, rewriting history to fit his narrative was second nature. He needed to feel in control, to feel like he was the one who pulled the strings. Elon's response was quiet, but it cut through Trump's bluster like a laser. Mr. President, with all due respect, my companies were valued in the billions and were global leaders in their fields long before I had any association with your administration. My platform is built on engineering and innovation, not political appointments. The directness was almost brutal. No softening, no apologies. Just a clear, unvarnished statement of fact, as Musk saw it. Trump probably stopped his pacing. He might have leaned over the resolute desk, his hands splayed out, as if trying to physically impose his will through the phone line. "You're playing a very dangerous game, Elon," he hissed. "A very, very dangerous game. You think you're untouchable with your fancy rockets and your electric cars. Everybody is touchable. Everybody. Remember that?" The threat was no longer veiled. It was out in the open, raw and stark. The air in the Oval Office felt like it was crackling with static electricity. Arthur, if he was listening from outside the door, probably held his breath. On the other end of the line, in his streamlined, future-focused office, Elon Musk likely registered the threat. He wasn't naive. He knew how power worked in Washington, how it could be used or abused. But if Trump expected fear, a sudden backtrack, he was about to be disappointed. Musk might have taken a deep breath, the kind a person takes before a difficult maneuver. Perhaps he looked at a photo on his desk, maybe of his children, or of a rocket successfully landing, a symbol of overcoming immense challenges. "Mr. President," Elon began, his voice still holding that remarkable, almost unnerving calm. "I'm not playing any game. I'm expressing a deeply held conviction about the financial trajectory of the country, a country I care about, where my businesses are based, and where my children are growing up. It's not personal. It's about the data, the numbers, the long-term consequences." He paused, then delivered a line that would surely echo in Trump's mind for a long time. "And frankly, sir, threats don't change the math. Threats don't change the math." Boom. It was like a direct hit. He wasn't just defying Trump. He was dismissing the very foundation of Trump's power play. The idea that pressure, intimidation, and a forceful personality could bend reality to his will. Musk was saying, essentially, your bluster means nothing against the cold, hard facts. In the Oval Office, Donald Trump was momentarily speechless. Really, truly speechless. His mouth might have opened and closed for a second, like a fish out of water. The man who always had a comeback, always had a slogan, always had a way to spin things, was, for a brief instant, floored. It was one thing to have political opponents attack him. That was expected. That was part of the game. It was another thing to have this inventor, this supposed ally, this man he tried to cultivate, so calmly and methodically dismantle his attempts at dominance. Trump finally found his voice, and it was raw, with a mixture of fury, and perhaps, just perhaps, a sliver of grudging, unwilling respect for the sheer audacity of the man on the other end of the line. Or maybe not respect, maybe just pure, unadulterated rage. "The math, Elon," he roared, all semblance of presidential decorum now completely gone. He was no longer President Trump, leader of the free world. He was Donald Trump, the brawler, the fighter, the man who never, ever backed down. "I'll show you the math!" You'll be seeing math you never dreamed of when the regulators start looking into every little thing your companies do, every permit, every subsidy, every complaint. "We'll see how your data holds up then, Mr. Rocket Man." It was a full-throated declaration of war. He was promising a barrage of bureaucratic red tape, a death by 1,000 cuts, the kind of government overreach that businesses, even giant ones like Musk's, dreaded. The grandfather clock in the Oval Office ticked on, seemingly oblivious to the storm that had just been unleashed. Tick. Tock. Elon Musk listened patiently until Trump had finished his tirade. He didn't interrupt. He just let the president vent his fury. When Trump finally paused, breathing heavily into the receiver, Musk's reply was, if anything, even quieter, even more controlled than before. "Mr. President," he said, and there was almost a sigh in his voice, a weariness. "If your administration chooses to engage in retaliatory actions against my companies because I expressed a good faith concern about a piece of legislation, well, that would be very unfortunate. Unfortunate for the thousands of American workers we employ, unfortunate for the technological progress we are making, and I believe unfortunate for the country." He let that sink in. He wasn't pleading, he was stating consequences. "My companies operate with transparency and in full compliance with the law," Musk continued. "We always have. We welcome scrutiny as long as it's fair and unbiased. But using regulatory bodies as a political weapon, well, that sets a dangerous precedent, doesn't it?" He was turning it back on Trump, subtly accusing him of abusing his power. It was a masterful move, a verbal Aikido throw. Trump was probably pacing again, a caged lion in the opulent confines of the Oval Office. He was a man of action, a man of immediate results. This kind of calm, logical, almost emotionless resistance was maddening to him. He wanted a fight, a shouting match, someone to cower, someone to concede. Musk was giving him none of it. Dangerous precedent? Trump scoffed, trying to regain the upper hand. "I'll tell you what's dangerous, Elon. It's dangerous when billionaires who think they know everything try to undermine the President of the United States. It's dangerous for you. That's what's dangerous." "I don't think I know everything, Mr. President," Musk replied, his voice still infuriatingly level. "Far from it. I simply know numbers. And I know that unsustainable debt is a threat to national security and prosperity. That's not an opinion, sir. That's an economic reality. My only aim in speaking out was to highlight that reality, in the hope that perhaps the bill could be improved." Improved. He was still talking about the bill, as if this whole conversation was just a friendly policy debate that had gone slightly off the rails, and not a bare-knuckled power struggle. There was a long, heavy silence on the line. Trump was likely breathing hard, his mind racing, trying to figure out a new angle, a new way to break through this wall of calm resistance. He was a man used to loyalty, or at least the appearance of it. He was used to people needing things from him. Musk, it seemed, needed nothing, or at least was determined to act as if he needed nothing. Finally, Trump spoke, his voice suddenly tired, almost flat. The fight seemed to drain out of him for a moment. "So that's it then, Elon? You're just going to keep tweeting? Trashing my work? After everything?" The after everything was telling. It was personal for him. Deeply personal. Musk considered his response. He could have offered an olive branch, a way to de-escalate. He could have said something conciliatory. But he didn't. "Mr. President," he said, his tone still professional, but with an undeniable finality, "I will continue to speak out on issues that I believe are critical to the future. If that includes commenting on legislation that I see as harmful, then yes, I will do so. I believe it's my right, and perhaps even my responsibility as a citizen and as a business leader who is deeply invested in this country's success." He wasn't backing down an inch. Trump let out a long, slow breath. It was the sound of a man who had thrown his best punches and found his opponent still standing, perhaps even looking a little stronger for it. "All right, Elon," Trump said, his voice now strangely devoid of emotion, almost hollow. "All right, I hear you." He didn't say he agreed. He didn't say he understood. He just said, "I hear you." And then, without another word, without a goodbye, without any of the usual pleasantries, Donald Trump hung up the phone. Click. The line went dead. In the Oval Office, Trump stood there for a moment, the heavy receiver still in his hand, listening to the dial tone. He slowly placed it back on its cradle. The room, which had been filled with his booming voice and the crackling tension, suddenly felt very, very quiet. Only the relentless ticking of the grandfather clock remained. He walked over to the window, looking out at the perfectly manicured lawn, but probably not really seeing it. His mind was elsewhere. He, Donald J. Trump, the ultimate deal-maker, the man who always got his way, had just gone head-to-head with Elon Musk. And he hadn't won. He hadn't lost. Exactly. Not in a way the world would see. But he hadn't gotten Musk to bend. Not even a little. A muscle twitched in his jaw. He turned back to the resolute desk. He picked up a pen, a heavy gold monogrammed one. He pulled a plain sheet of White House stationery towards him. He didn't write a long memo. He didn't dictate an angry letter. He just wrote 2 words. 2 simple words. And then he underlined them. Twice. Then he pressed the intercom button on his desk. "Arthur," he said, his voice flat, controlled, but with an unmistakable undercurrent of something cold and hard. "Get in here and bring me everything we have on Musk's current government exposure. Everything." Across the country, in his own office, Elon Musk slowly put down his phone. He didn't look triumphant. He didn't look relieved. He looked thoughtful, perhaps a little weary. He knew that the call was just the end of a chapter, not the end of the story. He'd stood his ground, spoken his truth, as he saw it. But he also knew that a man like Donald Trump didn't just forget. He didn't just move on. Musk might have swiveled his chair back to face the screen showing the Earth from space. That pale blue dot. So beautiful, so fragile. So many problems to solve. So much work to do. This was just another problem, another complication, another variable in a very complex equation. He took another sip of his Diet Coke. Then he picked up his digital pad and went back to sketching out his rocket thruster. The future was waiting. And Elon Musk, for better or for worse, was determined to meet it, no matter who or what stood in his way. The phone call was over. But the echoes, folks. The echoes were just beginning. 2 titans had clashed, not with armies or weapons, but with words and wills, over a phone line, in a battle of power, principle, and personality that would likely have repercussions far beyond that private conversation. Host, wow. Just imagine being a fly on the wall for that call, right? What a showdown. 2 incredibly strong personalities, neither one willing to give an inch. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Who do you think really came out on top in that exchange, or was it a draw? What do you think those 2 words were that President Trump wrote down? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comments below. We're really curious to hear what you think about this incredible moment. And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive and want more stories that take you behind the scenes of power, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell so you never miss an episode of Narrative Odyssey. We've got so many more fascinating tales to tell. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.